Welcome to the Spectators Podcast. Here are your hosts, Corey and Jeff.
Welcome, spectators, to another fantastic episode of the Spectators Podcast, episode 5 of season 2. My name is Jeff, and to my mic adjacent, wearing a very cheeky hat, is Keegan. Corey. How are you, Corey?
I'm doing good. I think the Nashville Predators came off a very good win against the Vancouver Canucks yesterday, and I Joanne happens to have a Nashville Predators hat in her collection, so I decided to take her hat and
They do
wear
have
it as
lots
well.
of hats.
Well, between the two of us, yeah, we definitely do. So yeah, a little cheeky, but celebrate their win yesterday.
They did win. Good for them. But we'll pause the hockey conversation for a little later because we did have some big events happen this weekend, which is Crown Jewel over in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia for the WWE, and it was interesting. Certainly feel like the presentation did not match the follow through. Certainly made it look like it was it makes sense for what it is and why it exists. Press conference and promo, right? Like, but it didn't seem like it really delivered. What it was being advertised as.
I feel like it was advertised very heavily from WWE over the last, 3 or 4 weeks now, since basically since Extreme
since
Rules.
2 months, because they before Extreme Rules they
You're right.
Did the Logan Paul and Roman match announcement.
Had the press conference and everything too, right?
He went on his podcast, right, and then it
that's right,
snowballed from there.
There's a lot of heavy promotion into this, and there was a lot of things that came up as we spoke on our last episode that we were excited about. Some things we weren't. The things we weren't excited about were exactly as we expected, and that's totally fine because we expected it. Mm-hmm. But the things that they had promoted heavily, they were really excited about, that we were a little more on the excited side. I think they just laid flat. Like they had opportunities to really fill this event up with some excitement, build some story. That's the biggest thing that I look at. This was an opportunity to build some story going forward, and it just felt flat on so many directions. Like I just don't feel like it had as much there. I didn't feel enthused about any of the storylines going forward. I don't think it built anything. It was kind of a useless event in terms of like where we were prior to where we're going post. We kind of know that this is a throw-in event. I understand that it isn't necessarily on the cards of, okay, we go from Extreme Rules to Survivor Series, etc. But you have opportunity here to build some story. And with Triple H being the guy who builds story, I was a little bit disappointed. And it sounds like the community in a whole was, one, disappointed in the event and how some of the matches turned out, and kind of disappointed with what I was saying. Like it was a little bland, and it kind of fell on its face in certain areas.
Yeah, and for me, it's just like, watch all the matches, but I've listened to a ton of analysis and seen a lot of the highlights, and I mean, I was thinking about it, and I think when the announcement was Logan Paul versus Roman Reigns, this is probably what we should have expected, right? Because really, that kind of match wouldn't happen outside of going to this kind of event too. Mm-hmm. And so we know that the Crown Prince, who basically bought this bloody thing for $1 billion for over 10 years.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, they said they were on their eighth 8th event here in Saudi Arabia.
Because they do the Elimination Chamber out there, right?
I guess they had done a couple of Elimination Chambers or other events in the past, because I can't imagine they're already on their 8th year of this 10-year deal.
No, it was 2018. I think they signed the deal. So
I think it was 2017 or 2018, somewhere around there.
Imagine they'll tack a year on because of COVID.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I got this feeling that like that Crown Jewel, like a sense of okay, Saudi prince, so if that makes sense, right? Like 8 matches, we're just gonna do them because to start off, like one of the hottest topics right now is the bloodline, right? Like you could argue outside of MJF, probably the hottest thing in wrestling, right? And you can't even further that storyline because one of the key members isn't even allowed in the country because of his lineage. And I know last episode I said he was Palestinian. He's actually of Syrian heritage, hence he was not allowed in the country. I don't think Sammy would have gone anyways, but he wouldn't even if he wanted to, even though the crowd at the press conference and main event were asking for Sammy. He was not allowed in the country. So, like, and I'm sure there's, like, I don't know how, like we mentioned last episode, I don't know how many members of that locker room feel comfortable even going to Saudi Arabia, right? On top of that. And so, that's, and like the lack of continuing storylines, right? Like, I know some pay-per-views that you end storylines, right? But like, so outside, like this is the only pay-per-view Triple H has had so far. You haven't seen a big return or a big story, right? And like it makes me wonder, like, what were they working with, right? Did they have ideas of some returns, but those folks didn't want to come because of where it is, right? Or the Crown Prince didn't want it because that's just not what he wanted, right? Because I mean, like, I think the one that speaks to me the most is Bray. Like there's all this anticipation of who this Uncle Howdy character is. You've got a pay-per-view, right? You don't. He had a good promo. Don't get me wrong. It was nice. It was a good promo because it does good promos.
It's not much different than what he has had over the last 3 weeks, to be honest.
Like you would think at a pay-per-view wouldn't be the case, right? You would think it's something big because it's a pay-per-view, right? You have people tuning in to like it's exclusive on Peacock and all these things, right? That's what really like made me think of like, is it just like, you know what, just see it as a show? Like they don't see it as a premium, like they see
it's
it
almost
as a
like an
premium
exhibition.
Word one of the analysts used, just like basically like like it's a celebrity it's just like it's a facade, really, if you think about it, right? But like it's like you still have to balance it being WWE and like you are telling stories, right? And you can't just fully treat it as a one-off. But you can in the sense, right? Like Brock versus actually, right? Omos versus why is his name?
Omos versus Braun Strowman, yeah.
Thank you. And then like even Paul versus Roman, right? Like like.
Well, okay, I'm gonna stop you here while I still have a train of thought. Okay, so here's I get your point. I do, but they had a mix of those exhibition matches that were kind of put together last minute, but they had opportunity in stories where they could have gone somewhere. Like you look at a few matches, right? Your Brock and Lashley match was a one off, right? It's probably, there's no story there. It's not going to continue. Well, it might now, the way that it ended. But anyways, that was that. Omos and Braun was kind of your two big giants. It was kind of a to bring people in to get excited about it, right? And then your third one was Logan Paul, kind of being that he's a superstar around the world. Lots of people know who he is, right? It's a name, and the crowd was behind him. You definitely felt that when you're watching the event. So those were your three that definitely had less attraction in terms of where can we take this, where has it been, and where will we go next. So those are your one-offs, and I think the frustration that's in the community is you had other opportunities where Bailey and Bianca, there's been so much build-up ever since SummerSlam, and it was probably the most disappointing finish of all of them.
Match didn't sound very good.
The match was okay, but it you know what it felt like? It felt like a carbon copy of Brock and Roman at SummerSlam. That last man standing. You know, how did Bianca end up winning the match? She pinned Bailey under a ladder, closed the ladder on her, and stuck it in the corner of the ring so she couldn't escape. She wasn't ready to lose. Like, she wasn't non-standing. She was trapped. And I think that's like an ugly way to finish something. Now, the problem is you had two matches where you had story. You have Asuka and Alexa who just returned. They've been, grudging back and forth with this whole, like, these two factions that kind of been going back and forth. You have them keep the titles for less than a week and have them lose the titles to back to Damage Control.
4 or 5 days, yeah, like
fantastic match. That was probably one of the better matches on the card. But you only had them have it for 4 or 5 days, and then where do you go next, right? Like, Alexa, they teased Bray. They teased Bray with Alexa. She was up, she was interviewing. There was a Bray tease. We've seen Alexa with Bray in the past. We know on a personal standpoint she wants to work with Bray again. There's story there. But why couldn't you, if you're going to have Bianca, and I love how Wade Barrett pronounced her name, Bianca, the entire time, because of his thick accent, but it's just stuck in my head. Sorry, but Bianca, she won the title. Like, she kept the title, and it doesn't make sense to me because, like, if you're gonna lead up to something like War Games, or you're gonna lead up to a faction versus faction, you want to have some incentive there. So what kind of happened is during our last episode, we kind of felt like whoever won the first match was going to win the second match, and it was going to determine kind of the women's side. We were out of the ballpark on that. We were wrong. It kind of goes back to how I was initially feeling that it would be a flip-flop, and it would be another flip-flop regardless of this. So that was a big disappointment because there's story there's nothing going forward, and I actually feel like this feud has lost momentum now. Now going into what do you do for Bianca? I don't want to see her fight Bailey again. I'm bored of that. But there is potential to have maybe Nikki Cross fit into it. But it seems like Nikki's going after this tag team, not the main title, because she's interfering more with that side of things. So we'll see. We don't know. But that was what I mean about, there's opportunity there. We didn't go with it. Then we have Jey Uso. Jimmy Uso versus the Brutes. Another great match. Honestly, another 4 or 5 stars out of 5. The match itself, the execution was fantastic. But despite Sammy not being there, we all knew he wasn't going to be there. There were no signs of any bloodline issues. There was no signs of turmoil. They came out, they executed flawlessly. And you know what it reminded me of? The exact carbon copy of what we saw at Money in the Bank against the Profits.
Yeah.
Another defeat, and this is why and the community, I think the wrestling community and the analysts are very tired with the bloodline now, because every finish is the same, right? Roman wins where Roman is losing the entire match, and then he wins at the end. The Usos are losing so badly, and then they come out and they win the end of the match. Same thing happened with Bianca, and that's why I look at it and I'm just like, Triple H he's in dire need of shaking something up. He needs to shake something up. A title needs to exchange hands. You can't just, I'm sorry, but you can't just have return after return after return after return and expect people to be engaged with the content, but also invested in it if you're not going to have anything change, right? This is just like a sport of like hockey, or when you have a new regime come in and nothing changes, the fans are going to run at a point of just exhaustion with the product.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a very similar thing. So that's why I do feel a little frustrated. The event as a whole was awful, because there was just so much stipulation of, oh, this is what we kind of expected to go into, and it didn't really deliver on the fronts of what we saw on Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown in the storylines. But on the other hand, to play as devil's advocate here, it is a throw-in event. It is an exhibition event. So, should we have really expected anything different? No. But it's hard to watch when you have something where you see carbon copies of things, right? Like Braun and Omos, the match turned out exactly like I thought, and it was another one where honestly, Omos looked the best he had looked that I've ever seen him, and I think you'd probably agree if you watch the match. He looked the best. He looked the most. He
Sounded
was in
like,
the best
yeah.
shape as he was. He looked great. He was able to execute. He was talking on his own. He didn't have MVP there. So I think he did really good, and I'm proud of him for that. But again, he's not technically sound. He's just a big guy, right? Bray showed more technicality in the ring, which I expected, but it was another one where Braun was losing the match ultimately the entire time. And then all of a sudden, Braun comes out and squashes him with one finisher. Oh man, Moxley's finisher is called the paradigm shift. There's no paradigm shift happening. Everything stays the same. They love to stay with status quo. And I don't know. I just felt like there was a lot of status quo. And when the Usos had their match, why didn't they have the Usos get involved with Roman in a way of messing up? Like, they came out exactly like they did for Brock. They got involved. The difference is that Brock had nobody, but he had Jake Paul come out and kind of protect him. But then Solo comes out and just does his thing, but the only reason Roman won is because Logan was distracted. That's the only reason he won. Logan had that ball. It's weird to say, but like Logan had that match won. He dominated at a lot of that match, and I'm like, I look at it and I'm like, it's the same old Roman finish. Like, get a distraction or a cheat or something, and then Roman wins. But the problem was, I don't mind that, because if you would have done something where you would have had some show of crack in the bloodline, some issue of building up more story and going into Monday Night Raw, I would feel better about Roman's win. But now, knowing Roman's not going to touch that title for the rest of the year, there's no defenses. It's a disappointment in itself. And I mean, I'm sorry to rant and complain, but you can only put so much up, deal with so much of repetition. And if it was just the bloodline, it would be one thing. But since it was across the card of repetition and a lot of other things, that's why I feel so like let down with it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I think you bring up really good points, and I think it does speak to, I think, the WWE just saw this as an event.
Yeah.
Because why would you not? Everybody is mopping up this bloodline story, especially like the whole like, is Jay gonna get kicked out? Right?
Yeah.
You can't throw one even little clue, right?
Even because you don't need Sammy for Jay to mess up, right?
And I think and especially like with the main event too, because you and I thought the main event Roman will win, but maybe it's DQ. Like, maybe it'll come at the cost of the bloodline. There was no cost to the bloodline.
Clean win.
Minus apparently Jay has a broken wrist, which was a really interesting thing.
I wonder if that's true, like if that's an in real life thing or if that's a kayfabe injury. I don't know, but they said he's been dealing with it.
Now I've seen a theory where on Friday, when it's against the New Day, Sammy will take Jay's place. Could you imagine?
Now that would be TV.
Could happen, and I think that's the sense I'm getting out of all this entire. Like, if I look at it globally, I think this rich Saudi prince paid the WWE, and WWE's like, okay, it's your ideas, and we'll give you a show. You're paying.
It's almost like they booked it. You know what I mean? Which is
here's $50 million, which is what they made for this show, and make us a show, right? Because like, it wouldn't take much. It'd be one spot, right? That's all you like. And how long is a spot, right? Like one spot where Jay, you know, attracted by something, and you know what I mean, or like he bumps into so like wouldn't be that hard, right? And like
You even have Jay kind of disagree with Jimmy maybe in the match and say something like, tag him in or get, those moments when you have like a frustrated tag and it's like, no, tag me in, like something like that.
yeah,
And then Jay getting his head kicked off, like something like that would have been.
sure fact they didn't do that, I think shows what Jewel was, right? So it can be frustrating. I am very women's division very perplexing to me, and I think they're a little stuck by war like that. As I said last time, they're stuck, right? I think they're stuck by war games too. We are going to see Bailey's faction versus Bianca's faction at war games, just because there's no really other five versus which they confirm it's 5 versus 5, like 5 versus 5. I mean, you're going to need to see now with Candice LeRae on Bianca's faction, that's 4, and then you have
I would imagine Nikki Cross would go to damage control side.
that's 4 for damage control. So each competitor is going to need one more each.
One more, yeah.
You're going to only have 3 weeks to really build that. So that's really interesting to see.
Well, I don't know. Sasha Banks just came out on Twitter. She just came out on Instagram and said she's got something coming and something's been cooking for 6 months now. She's ready to return and we'll find out soon. I don't know if that means she's recording something or she's on a movie or whatever, or does that mean she has a big return? Who knows? But I know she's cooking up some.
Noted in the opening the now what is it now forever? You know this the thing.
Oh, yeah. Then now forever, I think.
Thank you. Sasha Banks was in it. There was a spot in there where you could see her. That's you have that's.
Is that right?
Yeah. And of course,
so I heard when they got walked out and all that, like they cut everything from Sasha and Naomi out of that intro.
She was in the intro.
There. I didn't even notice that.
Everyone kind of noticed it, so it was right after that video too. So, and that could be the other theory out there. I've heard from a few analysts is that like that's the theory why this whole Bianca Bailey thing is sort of not giving Bailey the title because maybe they're waiting for somebody else, right? So we'll see. So yeah, I think Crown. What's that famous football saying that it is what we thought it was.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's a gimmick. Like that's really what it is, right? And
it's too bad, eh? They put all that time investment in the wrestler. I look at them again. I'm always someone who looks at the WWE and wrestling in general from the talent's perspective, right? And I understand there's the business side about it, but like it's a little much for the talent to go all the way there, do that, and then drive nothing forward.
So it's also icky, right? It's icky to know where it is, and
yeah, fair.
Like it's, I mean, like wrestlers weren't allowed to come because of their
certain ones,
right? Or if they're a woman, right? Like, I mean, they didn't say no to women, but like
they had to cover up. They weren't allowed to wear their normal gear, things like that. Yeah,
I think that's why it's just like it had some good matches. Like the Logan Paul match was fantastic, and it's Roman. You knew it was going to be good, right? He like even Logan, he did what's called buckshot lariat.
He did a buckshot lariat, and it was a beauty. Actually, I gotta say, man, like out of the whole thing that impressed me is the most was the fact that this is only his 3rd match. The guy's a natural. Like he is really.
He raised his level to Roman. Like
he did. He actually made Roman look good at certain points, which I thought was unbelievable. I was like, wow. I don't know if you saw the clip, but where he pulled out his phone and he went on to I was the whole time I'm like, I can't wait till he posts this because I was hoping he was posting it, but you couldn't tell if he was actually recording or not, and lo and behold he was, which is amazing. I love that. It was
cool, and I sent it to you. Where Roman checked on him after.
Yeah.
That was really cool, and it always warms my heart when I see wrestlers check on each other.
You got to. They take some big bumps in the ring there sometimes. But I know it's out of the ring.
Guy tore Paul. What was it? MCL, ACL, and
MCL, ACL, and his meniscus. It's going to be a long recovery down the road for him.
Don't know how you rest. He continued to. He said it happened in the middle of the match, so I don't know where that was. Like
it was probably after a spot, I believe, where he was on the top rope and he went for a backflip or a moonsault or something, and then he landed on his feet, and it probably buckled on him, and that's where it gave out.
And I guess adrenaline's going. Hey, so you can just.
You're not going to notice it, right? But afterwards, you definitely.
Crown Jewel was what it was, but one thing, and I know you want to talk about this, one thing that I thought was interesting is this is the first time we hadn't seen a Theory cash and I'm putting quotations for those on the audio side. So yeah, I thought they would do another, especially because Jake Paul was going to be there. I thought maybe because he's a boxer, like
You know what was funny is there was a really good spot to do it too, where Roman was pretty down and out, and Logan was pretty down and out at that point, and I don't even think the Usos has gotten involved at this point. Um, Solo was definitely not there. Jake was definitely not there yet, but I think they were both out of just pure exhaustion from that match, and it looked like Logan was about to get up, but then there was a spot where the Usos got involved, and then Jake came out and took both of them out. So everyone was kind of lying out flat and doing nothing. I thought that would have been a perfect opportunity for A Town Down music to hit and Theory to run out. He probably would have been able to cash in at that point. But again, the only thing is, you wonder if maybe he said no. Maybe he didn't want to go to Saudi.
I think they wanted to stop the gimmick, right? Because it's all it does is tarnish Theory, right? And I think, well, and I know you want to talk about Theory. There's a bit of a Theory conundrum. There's a Money in the Bank Theory conundrum that WWE is dealing with right now, right? Because you have a guy that was pushed. You have a guy who's in my view actually quite talented, belongs on the main roster. He belong in the top of the card battle? No. Be in the mid card? Yes. Should was winning the U.S. title? I don't think so. Like, if you look at his in-ring work, I think he's actually a pretty damn good wrestler.
He was certainly pushed at that time to that title, but
that's the thing. What we're seeing here, and you look at someone like Veer Mahan, for example, who was presented a certain way with Vince, didn't like it, so now he's back down in NXT and he's tagging with his old tag partner down there, right? I don't think you can do that with Theory, because I think Theory's too talented, in my view, to go back down to NXT. I think he doesn't need to
I think he's built up his credibility enough in ring.
His in ring is
to be a WWE talent.
Is to me really good. Like, he had his match against Rollins was fantastic on Monday, right? Or on Monday Night Raw.
He almost pinned Rollins a couple times during that match. So I mean, you definitely can see
that like 3 or 4 or 5 near falls.
A lot more people are doing this lately. I liked it. I like it.
Cool. So I guess the question is, like, if you are Triple H, like, what do you do with Theory? For lack of a better term, theory right now is that he will keep the Money in the Bank case to the very last moment he's allowed to have it, and he'll try and cash in. They have no plans for him to cash in moving forward. I think because you're concerned about the integrity of the Money in the Bank case, and that you don't want to waste it, right? Because there's 8 guys in that ring who, minus Omos, so 6 guys who are pretty deserving of it, right? Specifically Rollins. Like,
I think maybe that's why they're building up some of this Rollins and Theory match, and there's a couple weeks in a row where there's been some involvement between the two, because Theory was battling Mustafa Ali the week before, and Seth was watching the match. If you think back for a few years ago when Theory first made his in-ring debut in WWE, he was one of the disciples to Seth Rollins when Seth Rollins was quote-unquote the Monday Night Messiah. I didn't even think about that, but it popped into my mind. Him and Buddy Matthews, I think is what his name is in AEW now. They were his disciples, and so there is some background to Theory and Seth, and there is some things, but I just keep thinking about, like, the more I see him in ring, and it took me a long time to warm up to him in any way regard, but you look at him now and you see, like, I even think he's come a long way since Money in the Bank, like, even since Vince's push, and I think he recognizes, like, what he's gonna need to put work in, but one of the things that
he does, like, he takes his lumps, man. Like,
he does work. I feel like he does work hard. He's young. He knows he's got work. One of the things that I find that I'm hearing from the community is that the kind of consensus about Theory is, like, no one lost more when Vince left than Theory, and it's bad. It's a bad move in one way for Triple H to not invest anything into him, because I feel like you have opportunity to build a good superstar here. Like you do. You still have, you still have a Theory John Cena potential in the future. You know, that passing of the torch match kind of thing. You have Theory be probably a good mid Carter for now. Something I brought up to you off air was really Theory probably needs that opportunity to have like a tag match. I think when you know uh, teams and individuals build some tag credibility, become champions and stuff, it can kind of win over the crowd to get behind someone. And I think what Theory needs, to your point earlier, you said he needs that face transition. And I think being in that
Go
kind of
face, just to
situation,
show that he's not the same person that Vince was
he's not.
pushing, right?
Yeah.
Like you need to rebrand him, right? And I think but you need to do it on the main roster, not down in NXT.
No.
Although I wouldn't mind seeing a Braun Breaker versus Theory match. Pretty good.
That's a good way for Braun to lose his title too. Like if you are gonna give Theory a little bit of push to see how he does with the fans. But the other alternative is being in a tag match, because he has won the U.S. title, but that was kind of somewhat handed to him, that match, and he won the title. But I think being able to be in an environment where tags are exciting. If you have a good tag team, it's an exciting thing, and we're really lacking tags right now. If you had a good tag with Theory and someone else, and they could, I'm not saying dethrone the Usos, but like when there's the opportunity to finally have the titles separated on brands.
Gargano tagged together, right?
Him and Gargano in NXT. Yeah, they used to be friends, but now they're. That's what I don't understand with Theory. Is you look at him over the last few months. He had a little bit of heat with Bobby Lashley, kind of squashed that. He had some heat with. He's have some heat with Seth Rollins now. He's had some heat with Gargano, and that didn't last very long. And then he had that whole storyline with Dolph, and then that just like poof was gone. And even at the end of it, where we were trying to figure out what was the point of all that, Dolph was saying, it is kind of to get him on the right track. It's to get him to realize like he needs to earn this stuff and not be handed this stuff. And then they just kind of dropped the storyline. No Dolph. We haven't seen Dolph since he got squashed by who was it that he had the match against? It was just recently.
Braun?
Was it Braun? Was it Omos? No, it wasn't Omos. What other returns have we had? I know Dolph had a match against somebody and he just got obliterated.
Corbin.
There you go. Right. To give another person a push. So like they could have given some.
Yeah, and Corbin, that'd be a good one because they're both good on the mic. So
then you talk about that whole JBL wrestling god, modern wrestling god. If you want to keep Theory, if you want to keep him a heel, you get JBL to start backing him. If you want him to go face, you have him beat heel. You have him beat Corbin if you want him to.
Or he joins Corbin's faction.
He joins Corbin's faction. Theory needs a guy like Paul Heyman behind him. He needs a mouthpiece right now. Even though I think he's good on the mic, I don't think he has any major issues on the mic. I just think there's a lot of people who hated him. I was one of those people. I didn't really like his push from Vince. Now that he's not getting pushed, I like him a little bit better because I feel like he's doing the right things. I think he's a talent that is getting a little overlooked right now. And don't get me wrong, there's so many talent on the roster that are getting overlooked. What the hell do you do? What the hell do you do with this roster? You got a stacked roster of guys like Gargano, Rhodes, Owens, Zayn, Lashley, Rollins. Like, go down the list. You got tons of these people that are all really deserving of a title. A lot of them are at the end of their lifespan per se in terms of wrestling career, right? Miz probably doesn't have that much longer. Although I love Miz's work. I love what he does. He's playing the right role for his career right now. But then you got Loomis. Now that I think about it, you got Loomis too, who's fresh to the WWE, and like where do you go with
There's
all of these
Ciampa
talents?
too, but Ciampa has just had
Ciampa's
surgery. But
and Ciampa's he's older too. He's like 36 or something like that. Right?
oh, okay.
So you got older talent. You got to start thinking about some younger talent. But right now, like these older talent, Cody Rhodes, he's got to win a title, right? He's 35. The guy said in a recent interview, like maybe even a few times now, he said 40 is my max. I'm not passing 40. I don't want to be, to me, I don't want to be an old man wrestler. There's people who want to be old men wrestlers and old women wrestlers, but he said that's not what I want to do. I don't want to be like my father. I saw my father do it. My brother does it. I don't want to be that. And that's fair. I totally respect him for that. But there's other talent here too that are going to feel that way. So I think like, you try to get into the brain of Triple H and what he's thinking about bringing all these people back. You already have such a talented roster. What do you do? So when it comes time for a guy like Theory to step up, right, and be that guy for you, when is that going to be? Because you look at like Cena. Cena came up and was the guy at what, 25, 26? Probably
Orton,
somewhere
right?
around there. Sorry?
Orton as well.
Orton was 24 when he was the first, when he won his first world title. Brock Lesnar was 25 when he won his first world title. So like that's why I think like there's been so much about this whole like briefcase and like potentially having Theory lose it to somebody else. You've had opportunity to go there. You had opportunity with Dolph. You had opportunity with Gargano. Where are you going to go with it? Or do you just decide to have him keep it and actually win a title? He's already passed the threshold now to be the youngest world title holder, I think. Unfortunately, he's past that. They had an opportunity there. They could have made it an easy. He could have won the title. He could have had it, and he could have lost it the next day to a rematch.
Well, if you think about it too, speaking of pushing Theory, like under Vince's plan was for Roman to not lose any of the belts up until
which is interesting.
Mania. So like, was Theory going to lose his?
I wonder if he's going to be the first person who, just food for thought here. I wonder if he's going to be the first person in WWE history, because he's made a lot of good history, right? Maybe he makes a bad stinker history here. Maybe he's going to be the first person to have his Money in the Bank expire before he cashes.
And I hope not, because that's going to tarnish him. Right?
No, but what I mean is like he's about to cash in on the last day or the last few days. Like when did he win it? Money in the Bank, which was July. So he's got a year date on that, right? So if he cashes in, let's say he tries to cash in like June or July, like maybe the next Money. Well, I know they're not doing Money in the Bank, but the next premium live event that's around that time, and he's only got like days left, and he tries to cash in, and he unsuccessfully cashes in, not necessarily in the sense of, okay, he gets pinned and loses, but another one like he's about to come out to the ring and somebody like super kicks him or something like that, right? And then he's out. And then his contract expires. But if you do something like that, you're just telling the fans, like, we don't want to invest in the guy, right?
I think they got to get the briefcase off him. I think
they got to either get it off him, either got to get him off him, or have him win a title for a short period. Like, have him win the title, one of the titles, something like that. Maybe he brings the title back to Raw and loses it right away because he's not ready, But, like...
I prefer that.
I'd like to see him take the Raw title, bring it back to here's what I feel like. You have a huge talent roster on Raw. You want to get the title on 3 guys right now. There's 3 guys on the roster that you got to get the title on at Raw. It's Lashley, Rollins, or who would be your third guess? Sorry,
Rhodes,
right? So, and we're waiting for an anticipation here. So the most thing that makes sense to me is you have Theory win that title from Roman, bring it to Raw, lose it to Seth, and then Seth can play into defending that title against Cody. But at least Theory can be like, yeah, I'm one of the youngest WWE champions, blah, 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 blah. He'll get another opportunity in the future, but he has a title under his belt, right? So he still has some credibility. But then just lose it right away because, he's not ready to be he's definitely not ready to be a long-term title holder. We know that. I don't even think Seth would. I think if Seth holds the title, he's got it for max 3 months. They the last thing anyone you can agree with me here, I'm sure, but the last thing anyone wants is for anyone who holds the title next, either the Universal or the WWE title. We
To
don't
hold
want
it
to
for
see
long.
730 days of no, we want to see it move around a little bit, right?
Roster dictates that, right? It's just, there's enough talent there, you can't keep it, right? And it sounds like as of today, sounds like H does have an idea who's going to dethrone Roman, but the timeline's not. And what I don't even know what dethrone means. Like I don't. It sounded like when H came in, he wanted to split the titles. Not really hearing that rhetoric as much anymore.
We kind of felt like we heard it from USA Network too, more so than even.
Sounds like they
WWE.
backed off that. That sounds like
Yeah.
they're very happy. Well, because obviously the ratings are going up, right?
Mhm.
It's just a shame for Raw because like really the top title is the U.S. title right now. They're doing this they're doing the World Cup. Oh, that's I think it's just on SmackDown. They're doing the World Cup thing on SmackDown, but I think that's strictly for SmackDown, not Raw.
Mhm.
But anyways, it's sad for Raw to not have a title, right? Roman never goes on Raw. He only goes on a handful of times. Like he's 4 times since WrestleMania. So like that's not a lot, right?
I think he's only scheduled for one more this year, maybe 2 more.
Actually,
this year.
no. It's all SmackDown for the rest of
Oh,
the
it's
year.
also. I thought he was at least one Raw. Okay, so there you go. So that's hard. That's gonna hurt the brand.
He's on this. He's on the 11th. He's on the 19th, and then Survivor Series, and he's done for the year.
And he's done for the year. Yeah. So you
Obviously in
really have Lashley and Rollins running that show right now because we don't have Cody Rhodes in action.
Again, the U.S. title
Kevin
is
Owens
the top
has
title,
been
right?
Kevin Owens has been too on and off television. I don't know what I honestly don't know what they're doing with him right now. Like,
They're
he's been
going
too on and off.
to they're going to put him with Sammy, but they need to wait because the bloodline is so hot. So you'll probably start to see that storyline develop. Maybe at War Games, maybe Sammy and
maybe.
KO lock at War Games, and then Sammy has a hard time. So like Sammy has a hard time fighting him, and then Solo has to pin him or something like that, right? So we'll definitely see, but I think we'll stall there and our WWE conversation. So thanks everyone for listening so far. Please subscribe on YouTube. Please subscribe on our audio side, which is Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Review, give us a thumbs up. We're really happy you can listen, and yeah, we'll head over to talking about some hockey next.
All right, we'll catch you on that one.